Right now, let's talk about the latest catastrophizing doom and gloom report from the United Nations, specifically from the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF. It's called the Children's Climate Risk Index, and it claims that 1 billion children are at extremely high risk from climate change. Children living in 33 countries, they claim, face a deadly combination of exposure to multiple climate and environmental factors and inadequate essential services such as water, healthcare and education. And it ranks countries based on children's exposure to climate and environmental shocks such as cyclones and heat waves, as well as their vulnerability to their access to essential services. So this comes as Greta Thunberg has said that Britain is lying. She used the word lying when it claims to be a climate leader and accuses the government of creative carbon accounting. I mean, of course, she's quite right about that. She's got to be right occasionally, stopped clocks and all that. But let's talk about all this with Harry Wilkinson. He's Head of Policy at the Global Warming Policy Forum. Good morning to you, Harry.
Good morning.
1 billion children at extremely high risk from climate change. Reading some of the details of this report, it suggests to me that 1 billion children are extremely high risk from poverty, aren't they?
Well, that's right. I think scientists have learnt a very useful formula, and that is come up with a big scary number, big scary predictions, and they know that report will get wall-to-wall coverage, they'll get loads of citations, but this process has completely distorted science, in my view. We have the journalists, unfortunately, running around screaming about all these frightening reports, and actually the scientific integrity is being lost. Yes. And here in this case, it's missing the vital context that actually children born today are the luckiest ever generation. They're less at risk from extreme weather, less at risk from poverty actually as well than ever before. So clearly people in poverty are facing many hardships, and we want to see that situation improve. But actually there's lots of good news.
Yes. Well, indeed, I mean, just looking at the stats on extreme weather events, and again, the catastrophization we see contained in the very political statements made around the IPCC report yesterday. And if you actually look into the actual evidence and the many, many tens of thousands of pages written behind, backing up this report, you don't see quite the same certainty in catastrophization as is claimed. But when it comes to extreme weather events, there's no certainty, and not even sort of moderate confirmation that we are seeing any increase in extreme weather events overall. But certainly we know the damage from extreme weather events, whether it is a cyclone, a hurricane or tornado, flooding, drought, whatever it is. We know that the number of people dying as a result of those events has plummeted in the last 100 years, and that's largely due to the fact that getting people out of poverty is what makes a difference. You can witness this with an earthquake happens in Haiti and an earthquake happens in Japan. You know instantly which country is going to suffer by far the more casualties.
That's right, and that's because we have technological solutions to managing extreme weather events. But unfortunately, these don't seem to be very popular with the climate change alarmists. I was reading a Lancet report that's just come out about extreme heat, and they were talking about air conditioning not being a sustainable solution and that we should go for evidence-based solutions instead. But why they were against air conditioning when it clearly works and has been reducing extreme weather deaths in many countries just goes to show that they don't like solutions that work. They want societal change rather than practical solutions.
Yeah, it's interesting also, the air conditioning, heating in cold countries and air conditioning in hot countries is a solution for rich countries. It seems to be a very good solution. That's why we spend our own hard-earned cash on these things, and yet not for poorer people. Also, one of the claims, people are at risk, young children, these billion children, many of them at risk from pollution, from environmental pollution. In fact, again, if you look into the details on this, the environmental pollution that's bad for them, that's killing them, is actually living in homes, these, in shacks in very, very poor countries where they are being subjected to the fumes from wood-burning fires. If these children were in developed nations, if these nations were able to use, fossil fuels and others to actually develop and to industrialise and to build infrastructure, they wouldn't be living in homes where they're breathing in these wood-burning fire fumes. fumes, and they wouldn't be at risk. So when they identify the thing that's supposed to be causing these children to be at risk, it's often caused by the environmental lobby's demands that these countries don't actually use the cheapest fuels available to develop their countries.
Indoor pollution is undoubtedly the biggest single cause of air pollution deaths and damage. And that's, as you say, because people are burning wood, dung, and other forms of traditional biomass in their homes, and they're breathing in all those toxic fumes. And so actually building a coal-fired power station in many cases is the way to actually stop people breathing in those fumes and connect them up to the national grid. And we've abandoned in the West this hugely important humanitarian goal to actually electrify the developing world. And so China is stepping in. China is building all these coal-fired power stations, but they're not as clean as the ones that we would build. There's lots of corruption associated with these projects. And we're just ceding all of this political influence around the world to a regime that is determined to become the single most important world power.
Indeed. I mean, again, these things are all very much tied in. Just finally, we're very over time, but I want to ask you about Greta Thunberg. She's done a video. Of course she has. Apparently it's the anniversary of her starting her strikes. I still find it utterly incomprehensible that people are listening to this child who's not basically attended her secondary education and spouts, I mean, quite provably nonsensical claims to facts about the environment. But on this case, she's right, though. She says that the British government is lying when they claim that they are a climate leader. She's not actually telling a porky on that one, is she?
One thing that Greta Thunberg gets completely right is the hypocrisy of world leaders who want to stand up there with their big pledges without making meaningful policy decisions, without spelling out what these policies would mean for ordinary people. And Greta Thunberg sees through that hypocrisy very clearly.
Harry Wilkinson, I have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed, Head of Policy at the Global Warming Policy Forum.